Rain fell relentlessly that night, not in gentle drops, but in heavy, desperate sheets that seemed to mirror the storm inside their small apartment. A flickering bulb struggled to stay alive above the cracked ceiling. Water leaked from one corner of the roof into a small metal pot that had been catching drips for weeks. On the worn-out couch sat a little girl, no older than 7, wrapped in a thin blanket that barely kept the cold away. Her big brown eyes glistened with tears as she whispered words that would break any parent's heart. "Mommy, do you think God forgot us?" Her mother froze. For a moment the world stopped. Those words were heavier than the silence that followed. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes and gently brushed her daughter's hair back. But before she could answer, the little girl had already fallen asleep, tear-stained, exhausted, and clutching a small paper drawing of their family. Only, the father was missing. If you believe that kindness, second chances, and the power of love can change even the darkest lives, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because this story will remind you that sometimes God's answers come not in miracles from the sky, but in the actions of a broken man who refused to give up. Life had not been kind to Sarah. Once full of dreams and laughter, she was now a single mother scraping through life on a cleaning job that barely paid the rent. Her husband had left years ago when their daughter Lily was only 2. Since then, she'd carried every burden alone, the bills, the hunger, the fear, and the loneliness. Yet through it all, she smiled for Lily. Because if she didn't, who would? Every morning, Sarah would leave before sunrise, walking miles through quiet streets to reach the old office building where she worked as a cleaner. She'd scrub floors that would never remember her name and polish windows that reflected everyone but her. When she came home, Lily would greet her with open arms, proudly showing the day's school drawing or her little spelling test. But recently, things had gotten worse. The company Sarah worked for had downsized. She was given half her usual hours and half the pay. The landlord had already given her a final warning for rent delay. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Sarah sat beside the small gas stove with trembling hands. Her last note of cash lay on the table, barely enough for bread and milk. She pressed her palms together and whispered a prayer she had whispered 1,000 times before. "God, please, I'm trying so hard, just give me one more chance." But the only reply was the sound of rain. Across town, another life was silently unraveling. Ethan Carter, a man of wealth and reputation, stared blankly at the framed photo on his desk. He was a single father, too, but unlike Sarah, he had everything money could buy, except the one thing he couldn't replace. His wife had passed away 3 years ago in an accident, leaving him with their 5-year-old son, Noah. Ethan threw himself into work to escape his grief, building his company into a multi-million-dollar empire. But while his fortune grew, his heart shrank. Noah often asked, "Daddy, why don't you smile anymore?" Ethan never had an answer. He'd lost faith, not just in people, but in himself. Every day felt mechanical, meetings, deals, signatures, yet behind the mask of power was a man who didn't know how to live anymore. One morning, as he was driving Noah to school, his car slowed at a traffic light. There, on the sidewalk, he saw a woman kneeling beside a crying child. The little girl's backpack had torn, spilling out her books into a puddle. The woman, soaked and tired, was helping her collect them, comforting her softly despite being drenched. Ethan didn't know why, but something about that scene hit him deep inside. The light turned green. He drove away, but her image stayed. Days later, fate crossed their paths again. Sarah had just lost her job. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she still went to the school to pick Lily up. Outside the gate, a notice caught her eye. Hiring, temporary school cleaner, immediate start. Her heart leapt. She filled the form, praying silently. When she returned home, Lily was sitting by the window, watching the sky turn orange. "Mommy," she said softly, "do you think God forgot us?" Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted to say, "No, baby, he hasn't," but her voice broke. She hugged her daughter tightly, tears falling silently. That night, she didn't eat. She let Lily have the last piece of bread. And when Lily finally slept, Sarah wrote a letter, just in case she couldn't make the rent the next day. But sometimes God answers when we least expect it. The next morning, the school principal called her. "Mrs. Evans, you've been selected for the cleaner's job. Please report tomorrow." She cried, not out of sadness but relief. Maybe God hadn't forgotten them after all. For the next few weeks, Sarah worked tirelessly at the school. She'd often clean classrooms after hours while Lily waited nearby, drawing or doing homework. It was during one of these evenings that Ethan Carter walked in. He was there for a charity meeting, one his company sponsored annually for the school. His eyes fell on Sarah, mopping the floor quietly, humming to her daughter who sat drawing in a corner. Something stirred inside him again, that same warmth he'd felt the day he saw her on the street. After the meeting, as everyone left, he walked up to her. "You work here?" he asked gently. She nodded, a bit nervous. "Yes, sir. Just started. I'm trying to keep up with rent." Ethan didn't say much, but as he turned to leave, Lily smiled at him shyly and said, "Mommy says we should be thankful even for small things. Are you thankful today, mister?" That innocent question made him pause. For the first time in years, he smiled. The next day, Ethan called the principal. He arranged for a donation to improve the school. Facilities, new supplies, repairs, and an extra salary bonus for the cleaning staff. When Sarah received the envelope marked "Thank you for your hard work," she was speechless. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she hugged Lily tightly. She didn't know who was behind it, but she whispered, "God, maybe you didn't forget us after all." But the story didn't end there. One evening as Sarah was leaving school, the sky turned dark and thunder roared. Her umbrella broke halfway home. Suddenly, a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. It was Ethan. "You'll get soaked. Please let me drop you." She hesitated but accepted. The ride was silent at first, filled with soft rain tapping on the glass. But as they talked, Ethan found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone. About his wife, about Noah, about how he'd lost faith. Sarah listened, not with pity, but with quiet understanding. When she spoke about her struggles, her words were simple but strong. Pain doesn't mean God forgot us. Sometimes he just waits for us to move, so he can move through us. Ethan didn't say it then, but that sentence became the turning point of his life. Over the following weeks, he started visiting the school more often. Not as the powerful CEO, but as a father volunteering with the kids. Noah and Lily became fast friends. Sarah noticed how he'd kneel beside the children, laugh again, and for the first time in years, look genuinely alive. Slowly, a bond formed between them. Not forced, not fast, but real. One afternoon, the school held a charity fair. Sarah baked homemade cookies, and Ethan helped set up the stalls. When Lily's small art project won first prize, she ran to him instead of her mom and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Uncle Ethan. You make Mommy smile now." Sarah froze. Ethan looked at her, uncertain. But Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that carried gratitude, not embarrassment. That day, Ethan realized something. Love didn't always come from grand gestures or perfect beginnings. Sometimes it grew quietly, between broken souls who simply chose not to give up. A few months passed. The apartment that once leaked was now repaired, thanks to a mysterious maintenance grant that the school had received. Sarah's eyes no longer carried constant fear. She'd started a small side business sewing uniforms for kids, and every weekend, Ethan would visit with Noah, helping wherever he could. One winter night, the four of them had dinner together, candles lit, laughter echoing softly. Lily looked up with those same big eyes that once asked the saddest question in the world. But this time, she said something else. "Mommy, I think God remembered us." Sarah felt her throat close as she looked at Ethan, the man who had turned prayers into action. Because when Ethan had seen pain, he didn't walk away. He didn't offer sympathy or charity. He offered presence, respect, and hope. And that made all the difference. Months later, on a bright spring morning, Ethan invited Sarah and Lily to a community event his company sponsored, a new shelter for struggling single parents. He stood before the crowd and said words that made her tears flow again. There was a time I thought God forgot me too. I lost everything that mattered, my wife, my faith, myself. But one day, I met someone who reminded me that God doesn't forget, He just waits for us to help each other. This shelter is dedicated to her and to every parent who keeps going, even when it hurts. Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. She didn't need wealth. She didn't need promises. What she had found was something far more powerful, a new beginning built on kindness, shared pain, and quiet strength. And when Lily hugged both of them tightly that day, the world felt whole again. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, because stories like these remind us that love, faith, and compassion are never truly lost. Special request, comment, God never forgets if you believe that small acts of kindness can change lives forever. Because sometimes the answer to "Do you think God forgot us?" isn't found in words. It's found in the hands that reach out and the hearts that choose to care.